What if your ex could still access your money and you didn't even know it? It sounds impossible, maybe even paranoid, but for thousands of people, it's already happening. Long after the relationship ends, the financial ties don't. And sometimes those ties aren't just loose ends, they're ticking time bombs. Most people think that once the breakup papers are signed or the divorce is finalized, everything's been split clean. But that's rarely the case. In fact, there are hidden bank accounts, shared credit lines, and financial permissions that can quietly follow you for years without you noticing. It's not about revenge. It's not even always malicious. Sometimes it's a mistake. An old joint account no one remembered, a name left on a form, a forgotten login. But when money's involved, even innocent mistakes can cost you thousands. And by the time you realize what's happening, the damage might already be done. In this video, we're going to uncover the 6 hidden financial traps that your ex might have left behind, ones that can still be tied to your name, your credit, and your future. If you've ever been in a serious relationship, this is something you need to hear. Because what you don't know about your own accounts could be the most expensive lesson of your life. Let's get into it. One of the most common mistakes people make after a breakup is assuming the paperwork takes care of everything, but it doesn't. And the first place that becomes a problem, joint bank accounts. Think back, at some point during your relationship, you probably opened an account together, maybe to pay bills, maybe to save for something big. And when the relationship ended, chances are you moved on, but the account didn't. A lot of people forget to close these accounts. They stop using them, let them sit there, and assume if the balance is zero, there's nothing to worry about. But a dormant account with both your names on it is still active. And more importantly, both of you are still legally responsible for what happens in it. Let's say your ex logs in months later, maybe even years later, and uses that old debit card to buy something. Maybe they overdraft it, maybe they rack up fees, maybe they link it to a service like PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo and forget it's connected. Suddenly that account starts racking up charges, and because your name is still on it, so does your liability. You might not notice until it hits your credit report, or your bank flags your account. Or worse, when you try to open a loan and find out you're listed on a negative balance account you haven't touched since the breakup. And here's the thing, banks don't care who used the money. If your name is on the account, you're legally responsible. That's a hard truth no one tells you during the split. It's not about trust anymore, it's about exposure. So ask yourself, did you actually go into the bank and close that account, or did you just stop using it and hope it would go away? Because if your name is still attached, your financial future might be too. But that's just the beginning, because some accounts don't even look joint on the surface and still come back to haunt you. Now, here's something almost no one thinks about. Authorized users. Sounds harmless, right? But leaving your ex as an authorized user on one of your credit cards could quietly become one of the most damaging financial mistakes you've ever made. Back when things were good, you probably added them to your card for convenience. Maybe you lived together, or split expenses, or just wanted to make life easier. But if you never remove them after the breakup, they may still have access to that line of credit. And the worst part, they don't need your permission to use it. Just think about that. Your ex could still be out there using a card that's tied to your account, building up charges, hitting your credit utilization, and potentially dragging your credit score through the dirt. And unless you're checking your statements regularly, or even remember they were added, you won't know until the damage is already done. Even if they're not actively spending, their name being attached to your account still impacts your financial profile. If they defaulted on something else and your finances are still loosely connected through credit history, some lenders might see you as a risk. It's not fair, but it happens. And removing them isn't automatic. You have to contact the credit card company directly and request to revoke their access. Until you do that, the card is live in their wallet, and legally, you're still responsible for anything they charge. There have been stories of people finding out years later that their credit took a nosedive because an ex-spouse was quietly racking up debt on an old card and legally the charge is stuck. It doesn't matter if you're divorced. It doesn't matter if you're not speaking. If the account says their name and you haven't removed it, that connection is still active. So take a moment, go through your accounts, check for old cards you may have forgotten about, look at who's listed. Because the real danger isn't always what they do on purpose. Sometimes it's what they were allowed to do and you never took back. And if you think that's unsettling, wait until you learn what happens when the account isn't just authorized, but secretly created in your name. Here's where things start to get darker and more personal, because not all financial damage is shared. Some of it was never yours to begin with, and you might not even know it happened until it's too late. In some relationships, especially long-term ones, one person handles the finances. They pay the bills, open accounts, apply for cards, and make the money decisions. It feels like trust until you find out your name was used without your full understanding. It happens more often than people think. An ex opens a credit card using your social security number. Or they take out a small loan with both names on it just in case. Maybe they said they'd pay it off. Maybe you didn't even realize you'd signed something. Or maybe you never signed anything at all. But if the paperwork went through and your name is listed, you're legally tied to that account. And when that account goes bad, you go down with it. It might sit quietly for years. You may not notice it until a collector starts calling, or your credit score suddenly drops for no clear reason. You check your report and see a card you never opened, or a debt you didn't know existed, and then it hits you. This wasn't a joint decision. It was a hidden one. There are even cases where someone's ex opened accounts behind their back while they were still together, using saved documents, shared logins, or even forged signatures. It sounds criminal, and it is, but unless you catch it and prove it, the system doesn't always protect you. On paper, it just looks like your account, your responsibility. The red flags are subtle. Credit inquiries you don't recognize, mail for accounts you never used, statements for unfamiliar purchases, or small debts and collections you didn't know about. Don't ignore them. Because if your name was ever in their hands, there's a chance it still is. And while discovering a hidden account is bad, realizing it's tied to your taxes, your investments, or your future earnings is even worse. And that's exactly what we're about to talk about next. Not every financial threat comes from something new. Sometimes it's the things you forgot existed that come back to haunt you. And dormant accounts, those quiet, unused leftovers from your past, can do more damage than you think. Maybe it was a savings account you opened together, a brokerage account for a long-term goal, a shared retirement plan. Back then, it made sense to list both your names. You were building a life. But now, years later, that account is still sitting somewhere with your name still attached to it. And here's the part most people don't realize. Just because you haven't touched the account doesn't mean it's stopped affecting you. Financial institutions still see your name as legally tied to it. That means any activity, interest earned, investment gains, or tax reporting can come back to you. If that account makes money, you might be on the hook come tax season. If it loses money or goes into overdraft, you might never even hear about it until it shows up on a financial background check or causes complications in a loan application. So even worse, if your ex passes away or gets into legal trouble, shared accounts can get tangled in probate or lawsuits. That quiet old investment fund from 10 years ago, suddenly it's part of a legal battle. And because your name's still listed, you're part of it whether you want to be or not. It's especially risky when you're listed as a beneficiary. You might think that sounds like a good thing, but if your ex didn't update their documents, you could end up inheriting financial messes you didn't ask for. Or their current spouse might contest it. Either way, your name creates complications. One woman found out she was still listed on her ex's brokerage account 5 years after their divorce, only when she was unexpectedly sent a tax form showing capital gains she had no idea existed. The IRS didn't care who really earned the money. Her name was on the account, so they sent the bill to her. That's how it happens, quietly, in the background. A name left on a document, a box never unchecked. And years later, it pulls you into financial messes you thought you'd left behind. Because the truth is, old accounts don't disappear on their own. And unless you make the effort to remove your name, the past has a way of reaching back in. But here's the real kicker. Sometimes even your divorce papers aren't enough to protect you, and the reason why is something most people never check. A lot of people think the moment the divorce is finalized, everything is handled. The assets are split, the debts are assigned, and the accounts are divided. On paper, it's all clean, but here's the part no one tells you. The divorce decree is just a court order. It doesn't automatically update banks, credit card companies, or lenders. And if you don't take extra steps to follow through, your name could still be legally tied to your ex's finances, no matter what the paperwork says. Let's say the court ruled your ex gets the house and they're responsible for the mortgage. Great, right? Except if your name is still on the loan and they miss a payment, guess whose credit gets destroyed? Yours. And the bank won't care what the judge said. They only care about whose name is on the account. Same goes for car loans, shared lines of credit, and even utility bills. The divorce decree might say it's no longer your responsibility, but unless those accounts are refinanced, retitled, or formally updated by the provider, you're still legally involved. There are people who've spent years cleaning up financial wreckage caused by an ex who stopped paying bills that weren't even supposed to be theirs anymore. But because the official name change was never filed with the creditor, the damage stuck. And it doesn't always happen right away. Sometimes everything goes smoothly for a while. Then one missed payment, one collections notice, one lawsuit, and suddenly you're dragged into something you thought was over years ago. It gets even more frustrating when your ex doesn't cooperate. Maybe they promised to refinance the house and never did. Or they swore they'd take your name off a loan but kept delaying it. You don't want to chase them forever, but every delay makes the situation more dangerous for you. And in some cases, you can't even get your name removed without their help. That's when people start realizing just how permanent these ties can feel, especially when the relationship is already over. So here's the truth. A court order might give you the right to walk away, but it won't do the legwork for you. If your name is still on the dotted line, the world still sees you as responsible. And while that's frustrating, it gets even more disturbing when you realize you might not be the one facing the consequences, because when the debt collectors show up, they don't care who left who. They only care whose name they can legally chase. So here's the part that hits the hardest and usually the latest. You might think you're done with your ex, emotionally, mentally, legally, but the financial system doesn't see it that way, especially when there's money owed. And debt collectors, they don't care about your divorce. They care about names, signatures, liability. If your name is still on an account, even if your ex promised to handle it, you're fair game. Let that sink in. It doesn't matter if you haven't lived together in years. If the loan was in both your names and it defaults, the calls won't just go to them, they'll come to you too. The notices, the threats, the credit damage, and if they ignore it, you're the next target. Some people don't even realize it's happening until their wages are garnished or their bank account gets frozen out of nowhere. And guess what? Saying my ex was supposed to take care of that doesn't stop anything. The collector will simply say your name's on the contract. That's it. That's all they need. And this happens all the time with joint credit cards, medical bills, old car loans, or even utility accounts. If one person stops paying, the other is automatically on the hook. And if you think your ex wouldn't do that to you, think again. Sometimes they don't mean to. Life happens. But sometimes they do, out of spite, out of neglect, out of complete disregard for how it affects you. Either way, it's your name that suffers. Even worse, debt collectors sometimes dig through old records and find long-forgotten financial ties, just looking for someone to pin it on. If you never removed your name from that account years ago, they have every legal right to come after you now. And good luck untangling that without expensive lawyers and months of stress. The damage can be massive. Your credit tanks, your interest rate spike, you get denied for loans or housing, all because someone else made mistakes under your name and you didn't realize the door was still open. And this is why being financially tied to your ex in any way is a risk you can't afford to ignore. But now that you know all 6 hidden traps, the real question is, how many of them are still quietly tied to you? So now you know the relationship may be over, but the financial ties, they don't just disappear. It's not just about a shared past, it's about a future you didn't realize was still connected to theirs. A forgotten joint account, a lingering authorized user, an old credit line, a dormant savings fund, a divorce decree that didn't cover all the bases, or worse, debt collectors knocking on your door for something you never even touched. These aren't just technical oversights, they're traps. Quiet, hidden, and often devastating. And most people don't find them until it's too late. Until their credit is ruined, their accounts are frozen, or their future plans start falling apart for reasons they can't even explain. But here's the truth. This doesn't have to be your story. Go back, look at every account, every card, every login, loan, and leftover tie. If your name is still on it, fix it now, because the longer you wait, the deeper the damage. You already did the hard part. You ended the relationship. Now make sure the rest of you walks away too. If this video opened your eyes, drop a comment below and tell us which of these surprised you the most. Your story could be the wake-up call someone else needs. And if you're still working through the financial mess an ex left behind, you're not alone. Thanks for watching. Take care of your name. Protect your future. And we'll see you in the next one.